5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is IFAST podcast number
11.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Did we agree this is officially double digits now? Can't you say 10 is somehow not?
I don't know. What's the rule on that? Is it like the turn of the century where like the year 2000 wasn't really the turn of the century until 2001?
But it's remember Roman numerals?
Oh, Roman numerals. Nice callback.
Like
boy, you had me on that
trap.
one. XI.
Steel trap.
So it is XI.
Yes. Podcast number 11,
Awesome.
XI.
Excellent.
Today, I thought we would talk about things that clients and or athletes think they need when they walk into a gym.
Awesome.
Sometimes things they do actually, in fact, need. Sometimes things that they think they need based on things that they've read, things that they've heard, because basically the information that is out there now is overwhelming, even for people like us.
Well, true. And I think that's one of the things that we bump into a lot with when we're providing education. And not that we don't provide education to the clients, but I think they come in with some sort of preconceived notions, obviously, because what they lack is the filtering system, and so then that responsibility falls on to us when they come in with whatever they have perceived that their needs are.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've got a short list that I would like to run through.
Absolutely.
Starting with strength.
Mm-hmm.
So very common thing when people join a gym. You know, some people obviously want to lose fat or they want to lose scale weight, but a lot of people want to get stronger. And some people have the frame to push superhuman amounts of weights, which we've seen.
Right.
Other people do not.
Correct.
So
Correct.
If somebody is hell-bent on getting as strong as possible, and you feel as though they are running up against their ceiling very quickly, how do you have that discussion with them? How does that conversation go?
So I think what we should probably do is sort of define what the ceiling means, because I think that under certain circumstances, the ceiling is different. Strength is such a vague term. I think strength becomes a gym measure.
Yes, absolutely.
Versus something that is a useful comparison in regards to performance. So when we're talking about an athlete that needs to get stronger, what are we really defining as that? And so there's always the question that gets posed is how strong is strong enough when you're talking about athletes. And I think there's a very clear delineation as to when strong is strong enough. And I would argue that strong is strong enough when adding more strength takes something of value away that athlete requires to perform at their potential.
Yeah, I love that definition.
Well,
it's broad enough too. It covers a lot of bases, right?
Well, because again, are we talking about a baseball pitcher? Or are we talking about a defensive lineman in football?
Sure.
And so you have to have sort of this broad scope definition because their needs are different, and then therefore the degree of influence in force production is going to be different. It's not that the pitcher doesn't produce high levels of force; they just perform it at a different
body shape.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
there you go. I mean
earlier,
that's we were talking about rotation earlier, and so that's a big one. So body shape is, and then what are the needs? Because whereas I have a pitcher that I want to be able to turn and rotate, I might have a defensive lineman that if he gets turned, he just lost his job. And so again, this element of force output becomes a much different animal depending on who we're talking about. But if I take away even the defensive lineman's ability to move quickly because we increase his weight room numbers, but he slows down, I've just taken something of value away.
Absolutely.
And so again, we have to be able to have some key performance indicator that tells us when that happens. Yeah,
and I'm glad you mentioned that because it does cover a lot of bases. We see it all the time where young athlete goes into, and I don't want to pick on a collegiate program, but they go into a collegiate strength program and they are underpowered when they maybe walk in, and by year 2 or year 3, now the inverse has happened. Now they are overpowered relative to the fact that they are losing their ability to rotate. And what made them good at hitting home runs or throwing fastballs. So I think that's huge. But, from our perspective, when I'm thinking of like a general population client, and we've seen this in the past, where somebody gets strong up to a point where now they are no longer able to get into certain positions, right? Or they lose joint range of motion, or they lose variability in other systems as a result of this. That's where it's like, well, how far do we want to push this?
Right. Well, I mean, we're adding a stressor to their lifestyle, and so up to a certain point, that might improve their resilience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their ability to tolerate more stress improves, but at some point in time, and we do have a few general pop clients that kind of pop into my head when you think about some of the evening people that come in, and they are crazy strong for the average person.
Absolutely.
But at some point in time, the aches and the pains may start, and they want to chase the weight room numbers because there might be an element of aesthetics that goes with it. So gains in muscle mass or just an ego satisfying situation.
Competitive drive.
Exactly. But if you start taking away shoulder range of motion from a normal human being and they come in and go, I slept funny. That's always the good one. It's like I slept funny. When the reality is, it's like, no, you just can't move that shoulder like you're supposed to, and therefore you're putting, a compressive strategy in that area over too long a period of time, and so now you're going to get, reductions in blood flow. You're going to get wear and tear on tissues and such, and so that's what we don't want to. We don't want to just chase a number for the sake of chasing a number under any circumstance.
Yeah, I think sometimes too that's where our job as coaches comes in. Is to educate them and helping them try and find hey man, there's a balance where we can have you really strong, but also moving really good, a certain level of fitness, which I think, 95% of the people ultimately want. Sometimes you have to steer them a little bit in that direction and sell them on, hey, we can keep pushing this, but there's a cost.
Right.
So I think that's
and you make them aware of that. I think that's
sure.
fair. It's like everybody comes in here as an adult, and except for
the little kids.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the gen pop clients that we typically have. They come in as adults, and they get to make the decision as to what direction that they want to take things and how far they want to take things. But we just need to keep them informed. So again, our job becomes the filter. Yeah. It's like, because information is unlimited. I mean, there is nothing that you can't find from an information standpoint that's available, but again, who's reading it, and then what is their perspective going in? Because again, just using the word strength, it's like, what that is now a very vague term, because what does it represent to you? And then so we need to find that out, and then we can, as you said, we steer the ship. We just say we're going to go this way.
So going in the total opposite direction, or maybe not, depending on who you're working with and the degree of injury that they're dealing with. But PT patient comes to you, and they've got, 10 pages of MRI findings and radiology reports, and I've herniated these discs, and I've been on WebMD, and this is what I need to do for my back. How do you address that person who comes in with this preconceived notion of, this is the problem that I have, here's what I need to do to fix it, now you fix me?
Right. So they're going to come in. They're going to come in with again a preconceived understanding based on whatever their experience may be, what have they been told, what tests have they been exposed to, what practitioners they've been exposed to, and so they have a story in their head. And so step one is like, I can't negate that story under any circumstance. Because again, I've just met them as well, and while all of that information may be useful, it might be useful at different times. But the thing that I have to do is I have to get to know them through my evaluation process. And so what questions that I ask and what the answers to those questions may be. And then, there's the physical exam. And what I want them to understand is that all of the information that they have with them is going to be useful. It's just that I don't know how much until we go through the process. And so, an MRI is useful. But sometimes not meaningful. So all of those findings or objective elements that they're bringing to me may not be a factor. So can't remember if we talked about this before, but there's plenty of research that shows that a lot of these findings in MRIs are just incidental. Because we are adaptable human beings, and so even with certain structural changes, we're still very adaptable. We can distribute stress and load and and create adaptations and compensatory strategies that, one, keep us healthy, and they allow us to move very, very well. And so in many cases, the stack of MRIs and X-rays and whatever it may be, we just set that aside and we just say, okay, what do you have available to you?
Yes.
And what are your options available to you? Because think about this. So if all MRIs were absolute, like let's just say that if I find anything that would be abnormal in an MRI, then that would be meaningful. I can't change the MRI.
Right.
I mean, if their body decides it's going to change, it'll change it. But ultimately, I don't change the MRI, right? I mean, you'll see people that will come in with a herniated disc or something on an MRI, and they can feel better that day.
Yes. Yeah. And how liberating is that? Like, that's the way I always thought of that. I mean, we both dealt with aches and pains over our careers. We've dealt with hundreds, if not thousands, of clients and athletes that have dealt with stuff. And I think the thing that was really important for me was when I had that mindset of, oh man, this is like, it's a downward spiral, it's like limit, and that goes for everything, right? Like you limit your activities in the gym, you limit your activities outside of the gym. It becomes like this slow devolution versus, hey, I'm going to have this really optimistic outlook of, this is what it says, it's a snapshot, what else can I do, right? And whether it's hips, back, shoulders, knees, we've seen the research, we've seen whatever X% of people have herniated discs or labral tears or knee meniscus tears. Half of them, I mean, who knows, like a huge percentage of them have no issue, right? No limit in their function. It's just there.
Right.
So I think when you start to think of it in that fashion, it's like, wow, that's a way more empowering outlook on your health and your fitness, and just like, this isn't going to dictate how I feel.
Right. And it's important that somebody that comes in with something like that whatever their belief system may be, it just may be a lack of information, that they don't understand that an MRI is not a death sentence of any kind, and sometimes it doesn't matter. Yeah. And so just that awareness is helpful, because beliefs are impossible to overcome. Right. You just can't do it unless you can demonstrate to them, the immediate change, which often happens. Yeah. And a favorable change. Then they go, oh, okay, so now I get it. Right. Okay, so the MRI says this, but, and then they recognize the fact that, oh, I can feel better no matter what this thing says. Sure. Yeah. So another very hot button topic, and it's not as much now, but I feel like 5-10 years ago, like the high intensity interval stuff. Oh yeah. That was like the buzzword. Sure. And people would say, oh, well, I know I need fat. I want to lose fat. I want to lose body weight. Yep. High intensity interval training. The first 60 whatever search results on Google told me I need that. How do you counter that? When somebody comes in and it's like, this is what I need to do. Once again, I don't want to negate that, because it may be something that we would use. And so then the answer becomes maybe. Yeah. But, and then always with respect to the individual, it's like, what have you done prior to coming here? What has been your exposure? What is your experience? And then again, providing an element of education as to, well, here's what happens before you do that stuff. This is why it's valuable. Yep. And again, it's like they just come in with a story, and I can meet them at their story, and then I can direct them wherever that story really needs to go. Because again, while they have all the information available to them, they just don't have the filter. And so again, it's like, okay, I really like that idea. It is useful based on the information that you've been exposed to, but let me provide you another element of information that to keep you safe, to keep you healthy, and to make sure that this is effective, we need to do this, this, and this first, based on them. Yes. And again, I think the people, most of the information that you're going to read is going to be generalized. Yeah. So I'm reminded, and I don't remember this gentleman's name, you may remember him, because I believe you evaluated him. I talked to him on the phone, you evaluated him, and this guy was, probably 40 pounds overweight, and he came in for his initial assessment, and you literally did the resting heart rate, and you did his blood pressure, and you sent him home. His blood pressure was 150 over 110. Yes. And you just said, look, we had a cutoff. I would love to work with you, but you need to go see your doctor. And initially he was kind of put off by that. Right. And, when you're a young business, you're like, I want
we need people to train, right?
Right.
But he said, no, I understand. I'm going to go see my doc. And literally came back 3 months later. It was normal. It was like 120/80.
Right.
And he was like, man, I can't thank you guys enough. I had no clue how bad I felt until I got this under control.
Right.
And that's the example of, hey, high intensity interval training may be great, but totally inappropriate for that human being, right? Absolutely. Like that guy needed blood pressure meds. He needed basic aerobic conditioning. He needed to get all those pieces kind of in play before you could get more intense with his training.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, people have a desire.
Yeah, for sure.
But that doesn't mean that they are qualified. And then our job is to determine, it's like, okay, what are your qualifications for this type of training? It's like, we don't negate it. It doesn't mean it's not useful, but we need this first. We need to prepare you for that type of thing.
Yeah. So one other topic I wanted to touch on, because we get a lot of athletes, young and old, that want to be faster. They want to be more agile. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've had in the last year with parents that little Johnny is great at X. Right. Insert sports skill here, shooting a basketball, kicking a soccer ball, whatever. Right. But he or she is too slow. So a lot of times when they come in, they say they just need speed. They just need speed work. Just an hour of speed training. Right. And so one of the first things I tell them, well, anything after about the first 15 to 20 minutes no longer constitutes speed training. Right. Right? You are now chasing conditioning or some other adaptation because you don't have the output anymore. Right. But another part of that, and it comes back to strength and hitting that certain threshold, is basic strength training for a lot of young athletes absolutely carries over to speed and power production early on in their training because their threshold is so low. Right. So
just learning how to produce force.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Because let's use top end speed, like for as an example, that's all based on how much force you can apply into the ground. Yeah. And so a lot of these kids just don't have that capacity. And so that's why, it's not just the speed training. It's like you don't negate that. Obviously, running at top speed is probably the most impactful because it is the highest output activity that we can produce. Yeah. But there are other avenues that need to be explored when we're talking about producing a performance-related outcome. So what are those influences?
Right. So. Yeah, and it's so interesting too because you get the other side of that where you've got like the track coaches or whatever, and look, we can't debate it, right? Like high-end sprinting is probably the most neurologically demanding thing that we can do. So then you get other people that are like, well, but those athletes aren't strong enough. Well, maybe it comes back to your measure of how are you determining strength. If you're determining it within the four walls of a gym, maybe they don't look that great, but it's only because they don't maybe have some of the prerequisite movement skills. Right. They don't have the coordination. They don't have the time under the bar. But rest assured, those athletes are pretty freaking strong if they're running as fast as they are.
Yeah, so here's another interesting little element that rarely gets considered is when we talk about this in our little area here at IFAST is the idiosyncratic physics of the human, like their physical shape, and so some people won't respond favorably to load at first, and some people do, and then some people need to be unloaded to create the speed adaptation first, and so our ability to identify that has probably changed a lot of what we've done over the last few years. And so that needs to be understood too, is that, okay, based on your body type and based on the way that you currently move, adding strength, like the traditional strength training, actually is going to negate your ability to get faster. And so we need to do other things first. So again, those things need to be considered. And it's poorly understood.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating because you think about, you can just think of certain athletes growing up where a coach would describe them as, they've got heavy feet or heavy legs. Well, they need to get stronger, right? And then you're like, but now they're slower, right? And, their feet are heavier, and now kind of with the changes in kind of thought process and definitely in the training process when we take people out there and start to unweight them and that's a pretty cool change.
Right? Well, because there's a learning aspect of it as well. It's not just about force production. It's about them actually learning how they move and how they do produce force. And and educating them in that respect makes all the difference in the world, because we just, again, people are individuals. We always talk about N equals 1. Everybody's their own experiment.
Yes.
And so we have to identify those factors that influence the performance-related outcome, because not everybody's going to respond the same way. Not everybody achieves force production the same way. We could have 2 baseball pitchers with 2 different body types, and we've had them in here.
Yes.
You know, you look at Josh Lindblom, that's going to be pitching for the Brewers. Josh is a big guy.
Yeah.
He's, you know,
Big, strong guy.
6'5", 230 pounds, and then we've got, you know, another 6'3" pitcher that is 25, 30 pounds lighter than he is. And so they don't produce, they can both throw 95 miles an hour from when they want to, but the reality is they don't do it the same way. And so how can we possibly expect them to be on the pitcher's program when the reality is like, okay, your pitcher is the name of your job, but you guys don't throw the same way.
Right. And that's the fun part of what we do, right? At least for guys like us. It's like, hey man, let's figure out what makes this person work. What strengths do they have? What weaknesses do we need to mitigate? That's what's really exciting about our work, I feel like.
Yeah, but it's always interesting because, again, everybody's their own project, and that's what makes it fun. Rather than, you know, and I use pitchers as an example because it's really easy to visualize. It's like you can't take 10 people that you know, while everybody throws a baseball or whatever it may be, we just can't look at them the same way and expect the same possible outcomes.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this was good, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
Hopefully, those of you listening in at home enjoyed this. Just, you know, when you get people in, everybody's going to have their own preconceived notion as to the best way to get the job done. And part of your job as their coach, as their trainer, whatever you want to think of yourself as, is to help educate them and help them better understand your philosophy, why you do things the way you do, because ultimately they're coming to you because you're a trusted expert.
Absolutely. Speaking of trusted expert, let's talk about the next podcast.
Oh, yes. Yes, the next podcast is going to feature the one, the only Jenny Owens. So we talked about her episode 1-ish.
I think so.
You know, 1 or 2, very early on. Amazing massage therapist, works with basically any athletes that I can refer her way. She's a preferred vendor for the Indianapolis Colts. So there was a time where she was working with roughly 2/3 of the defense, I feel like.
I can only
so
imagine.
she's pretty darn good at what she does. So we're going to talk to her about...
And she's got a little bit of a personality, too.
Oh, yeah.
She's amazing. She's going to be a blast.
She's amazing.
So we talk about our unofficial sponsor?
Yes. Before we go, the IFAST podcast, unofficially sponsored by...
Propel Water, Black Cherry.
One of these days, Propel Water. Get on board.
Maybe someday. It's Gatorade. They... You know, aren't they the Budweiser of sports refreshments?
Amen.
Perhaps. I don't know.
Just a little money.
We'll give it a shot. So there you go, Propel.
Awesome. Well, this was great. Thank you, Bill.
Had fun?
Yes. All right, everybody. Tune in next week, and we'll be back with our next episode with Jenny Owens.
See you guys.
Take care.